Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Teacher Needs a Drink podcast. I am Elvis, your host, and I'm here to let you know that this is a not safe for work podcast, and we are teachers at the end of the week and really the end of our ropes, and we'd like to be able to talk honestly and openly about what we do without having to worry about losing our jobs, so we'll be using pseudonyms throughout the podcast. Today is a very special episode. We have our host Bunny O'Hare taking the lead today, and all-female host group today to talk about reproductive rights. Yes, that's right. Today we're talking about reproductive rights, how they apply to education, how do they apply to us teachers. And first I want to say, while I'm not on this episode, I support everything these women say 100% and support their right to do whatever they want with their bodies because it's theirs. Next, I also want to let you know that there is a trigger warning here. If you are sensitive about the topics of abortion, miscarriages, pretty much anything in that general wheelhouse, you just might want to, listen cautiously or skip this one altogether. This is a very liberal, left-leaning podcast, and so if that's just going to piss you off and make you just slam on your brakes, then, skip it. That's fine with me. Anyway, I'd like to thank all the patrons who support us here, so I'd like to give a big shout out to all of them. Here we go, all of our patrons. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Big thank you to Mistress Mischief, Natasha S., Miss Anthropy, Princess Buttercup, Dragon Lady, Sunday L., Kelsey, Nicole B., Shannon E., Helena C., Aaron B., Stephanie S., Maggie M., Texas Teacher Kristen, Miss Sunshine, Hattie F., James and Allie J., Jody D., Samantha D., Lisa C., Rachel, Jen Genie, Exhausted Band Director Kimberly K., Kim K., Jessica A., Swiffle Ev Owners, Amanda F., Ariana L., Physics Runner, Steph, Science Seat 17, Michael M., William P., Aldrich T., La Scorpionita, Britt M., Iron Swine, Noel R., Teacher H., Teresa H., Biker Teach, Marsha M., Christina B., Kristen B., Jason F., Amber H., Abby B., Sarah B., Regina L., Josie S., Sam B., Lucy P., Mary E., Jamie B., Red Violin, Kristen W., Vanessa J., Mary C., RJR, Kristen C., Johanna H., Spurs Panties, Irma A., Nimmy, Melissa M., and Sarah N. Big thank you to all those patrons out there who support us. I'd also like to thank our podcast sponsor, Ludlam Dramatics. If you are a theater teacher or know one in your building, send them to Ludlam Dramatics. They make exclusive posters for educational theater classroom teachers, and you really can't find them anywhere else in the U.S. All right, friends, enjoy this episode. There is going to be one small little bit that's been cut out and put onto the Patreon, and all of the resources and things mentioned will be available in the show notes, as well as on our website. So everyone, enjoy, check yourselves, love you, vote, enjoy the podcast.
Usually I'm chanting balls going into this, but that feels really awkward right now.
I can chant something for you.
Chant something for us, Shirley. My beloved.
Fuck the Supreme Court. Fuck the Supreme Court.
That works for me. That works for me. Welcome to a very special episode of Teacher Needs a Drink podcast. I am your guest host, Bunny O'Hare. And before we get started, before we introduce our fabulous hosts today, I do just want to go on record and say that this is a liberal, hippie, left-leaning, unequivocally pro-choice podcast, and the opinions expressed here will reflect such. With that said, we have some of the finest minds in education joining us tonight. We have your friend and mine, Mama Chicken.
Hey, friends.
We have got the beautiful, her beauty surpassed only by her brains, Zola Zanzibar with us.
Hello. I wish we didn't have to be here right now.
And we have the stunning, and we miss her so much, Lucille Lane.
Hey, y'all.
Yay!
And I saved the best for last because I always look forward to hearing her quotes. Shirley, what do you got for us?
I just love a big, strong man who's not afraid to show it with someone half his size.
Hey, so, yeah, kind of a weird week. To quote Nick Fury's stupid-ass decision, I think that brought up a lot of emotions. So let me just check in with our people. Lucille, how you doing? You all right?
I mean, yeah, I'm good. I don't need an abortion right now. So I'm sure those people who do need an abortion right now are not that great. And I sympathize, empathize, and all these sizes for them. I've thought about that loud and hard. But in a nutshell, health-wise, sure, I'm great.
Mental health as well, because I know this.
Yeah. This is more sad girl summer for me. So it's okay, though. That's all right. We're getting the mental health I need. I am seeing someone and doing all the good things.
Good. That's good. We love to see the self-care.
Yeah.
Zola, how you doing?
Y'all, I get so tired. I've been mad since like late 2015.
Yeah.
I'm so tired. Yeah, no, I am okay. I am not going to get beat down, but I'm tired.
I feel it. Shirley, you doing okay over there?
Panic attack this morning. Just casual panic attack. Still kind of recovering from COVID. Kicked my ass way more than anybody else in my family's per, tradition. My mom's has an injury that we're dealing with. Honestly, it really hasn't hit me yet. And it will. And we'll get into why. But I thankfully have a therapy appointment already set up for tomorrow morning. There's that, at least. I'm trying to be proactive.
That's good. That's good. And Mama Chicken, you all right?
I kind of identify with Shirley in that I feel kind of numb about it, because when the first document was leaked and I was enraged, and then it actually happened and I was like, of course it did. And I just I'm mad and I don't know, frustrated about that. Otherwise, it's summer, so.
At least there's that. I will say, at least we're not I'm pretty thankful we're not in the classroom right now, because what we're going to be kind of looking at and talking about is what this means for women in general and specifically for teachers. I'm going to briefly call on Zola's knowledge here, because Zola actually works in a law-related, law-adjacent, I don't want to give too much away, field. Can you give us a brief rundown of why this isn't just about abortion?
I have noticed a lot of people, there's been a lot of misinformation and that's almost as bad as disinformation. So it is good to kind of, so the case is actually Dobbs versus Jackson. It's Women's Health Organization. And it was heard by the Supreme Court, obviously, and it's what overturned Roe and another case, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, that had reaffirmed Roe. They overruled both of those because originally Roe was decided under the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment in the Constitution that provides a fundamental right of privacy, which protects a pregnant woman's right to abortion. With due process clauses, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property, and without due process of law. That's what Roe was about. Privacy, that's the big thing in there. Planned Parenthood reaffirmed it. And Planned Parenthood v. Casey reaffirmed it. Now Dobbs now is overruling both, saying that Constitution does not confer any right to abortion under equal protection or due process. So the authority to regulate is returned to, this is important, to the people and the elected representatives. It didn't say states. So that language leaves it open for either a federal ban or guarantee. Just saying the Constitution doesn't guarantee it, which is why we've had a lot of states suddenly enact these trigger laws that they've had before. That's why all of a sudden, I think it was Missouri that was the first one to ban, do a full out ban. These trigger laws are garbage. Obviously, but a lot of times they are either have been on the books. Some of them have conflicting information. So that's the thing. And because of that, we obviously had, the 5 that were in, 6 in the majority, 3 dissented. But what has gotten everybody a lot worried, but not surprised, is that Clarence Thomas wrote a concurrence. And a concurrence is when there's a ruling and they agree, but either for a different reason or with additional stuff. And his little additional stuff, he argued that it doesn't, that the due process clause does not secure a right, and thinks that they should apply that reasoning to other landmark cases. And he specifically mentioned Griswold, Lawrence, and Oberfeld. Griswold had to do with, in 1965, about married couples, I think it was a married woman, have right to access contraceptives. Lawrence v. Texas was a sodomy law and we cannot outlaw consensual gay sex. And Oberfeld established a constitutional right to same-sex marriage. That's why Roe has been, because it does deal with privacy, has been referred to as the domino. And once Roe is gone, there are other decisions. People can bring cases to the Supreme, remove previous right. And I do have to say there was one about Loving versus Virginia. That is the right to have interracial marriage. And obviously Clarence Thomas is married to a white woman, a seditious, evil white woman. That's different. It's a good joke, but it's that one is decided under the Equal Protection Clause and not due process. He's specifically speaking to due process, and that's why it's not mentioned. And I think some of that stuff, some of those nuances are important when we talk about these, because as teachers, we know the information is important. You need to be specific on what we're having an issue with.
Thank you for clarifying and spelling that out for us, because I was one of those very people who did not understand the distinction between Loving versus some of the other cases. So
I did too. And I need to say, I'm not a lawyer, and if I have misspoken my information is right. I know I looked it up. Everybody's giving their time and emotional labor for the podcast, and so if there's any extra information, I think just go look it up.
Disagree. You are a goddess, not a teacher.
Yes, I am. In fact, thank you, sweetheart.
That's right. Guys, I'm going to be honest. I just kind of don't even know where to begin. We would just like to offer a heartfelt middle finger to everyone who told us we were overreacting in November of 2016.
One of my teacher BFFs actually was very Republican. We're still BFF. When it happened, she sent me a text, and I was like, oh my God, y'all, Trump won. And she sent me a text and said, maybe it won't be so bad. 4 years later, I was like, hey, remember that time that you said? She even had to agree. She was like, okay, it was so bad.
As teachers, there's kind of two angles to this. There's kind of, how does this affect our students? And then how does this affect us? Because teaching is as we all know, a mostly largely female profession. The opinion was leaked before school was out for most of us. Did any of you guys have students mention it? I know, Shirley, you teach kids that are a little older than mine. Did any of yours say anything about it?
They did. They were pretty scared. I teach high school, and these were specifically my seniors who were really, really scared and wanted to know what their options were. They were advising each other, look into IUDs, look into, long-term birth control. It brings up a lot for me, because I have a kid who's a daughter, and that's the scariest thing for me. That's the scariest part. They're upset. They're angry.
Mine didn't mention it too much, but I teach middle school. But I know the other teachers that I work with, the ones that lean in a similar political direction, definitely, the next day we were all just kind of giving each other looks in the hallways, like, what the hell is going on? So it's distressing. I'm glad to hear your students saying, looking into long-term contraception, because that has a little less room for user error.
Well, but then that opens up another whole can of worms. These stupid white men, I know they did it in Louisiana, and I believe somebody in Texas said they were going to draft a bill where they are claiming that things like IUDs are abortives. and fall under this domino. Does anybody else have an IUD besides me?
I do not.
Not me.
Would you say are some of the advantages or drawbacks? Do you recommend that for other similarly minded teachers who might be freaking the hell out right now?
Absolutely. My IUD saved my ass in a couple of ways. The first is that after I had my youngest, my daughter, my doctor told me that if I got pregnant again, that I would not make it to the hospital, that I would have because I gave birth to her in 2 hours from start to finish. And my older son, it was 4.5. And yes. And she said, if you get pregnant and you have another kid, you're not going to make it to the hospital. And that's scary as fuck. And I'm done. I was done. But she said, because I hadn't been on birth control in years and years and years. But she said, you need to look into something more permanent because your options will be limited. And so I went on just regular birth control and I didn't have a good experience with it. And I probably tried like 4 different ones. And finally, I went to a new gynecologist and he said, well, it's free. You should get an IUD. Your insurance covers it 100%. And I didn't know about it. And I did the research. It's a hormonal IUD. It was implanted in the office, but it's brief. And what it has done, it is essentially almost eliminated my periods, which is great. I have really heavy, scary ones. And very often I will miss at least a day or 2 per month just because my legs weren't working or I was in so much pain I couldn't walk. After I did that, my awesome husband, Mr. Temper, he went ahead and got a vasectomy on top of it. And it was so funny because I was talking to like a year later at my gynecologist. I told him, I'm like, hey, in addition to this, my husband got the vasectomy. And he said, did you know that vasectomies are not as successful as an IUD is?
Ooh,
I had no idea.
There you go.
That is a thing to know.
It is a thing to know. And so we have both, but I still worry. I'm worried.
Yeah.
So I 100% recommend the IUD, but that's me. And that may not be the same for everybody. I also recommend just no men ever. But I am legally obligated to share my life with my husband. Have you guys thought about that? Thought about like birth control and what that could mean down the line?
Yeah.
It's a scary thought.
There's a lot of stuff I've been reading, birth control and failure rates, and I came across stuff on intimate partner violence and the numbers on women who are forced to have a pregnancy. It's not all when they don't use birth control, they're being careless. It's either their birth control failed or it was sabotaged. Y'all know what stealthing is?
Nope.
Hope you never find out. It is when a man will remove the condom without their partner's noticing. Mm-hmm. And that happens. And or sabotaging birth control, or coercing or forcing into pregnancy.
Holes in the condom.
Yeah. I mean, the pills, losing pills, making sure they don't take them at the same time. There's a lot of stuff. And a lot of that is what concerns me is the amount of abuse that can happen to people. Rates on the number one cause of pregnant women is homicide. Cause of death for pregnant women is homicide. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of intimate partner violence that happens when a woman gets pregnant. And I think that's just been on my mind more than anything, on the danger this puts a lot of people in, not even for someone who just does not want to have a baby or is not equipped to have a baby. When it's dangerous for someone to have a baby, not just with their medical issues or health, with just their life situation. So that's been on my mind a lot.
In addition to that, the fact that this does not include cases of rape or incest. And that's something that I think about a lot.
Call me naive, but I just learned that I've had an abortion. I didn't know it. I had a miscarriage.
We both did.
Yeah, I had a miscarriage, and at 10 weeks, and it was not a planned pregnancy, but it didn't matter. We were gonna carry it through, but we had miscarriage, and so the doctor was like, "Well, come, you can get rid of this naturally, and let it run its course, and it might be painful, or because the baby there was no heartbeat, or the fetus. I don't know, the baby, it was a fetus, had no heartbeat, and they were like, or we could do a DNC, and I was like, okay, a DNC sounds good, and it was like literally this week that someone was like, a DNC is an abortion. I was like, I didn't even know.
2 weeks ago, I figured that out.
I can't imagine not having that option. And God damn it.
We talked about this. I had the same situation. I did want my pregnancy, and I lost the fetus at about 7 weeks. And I was in huge amounts of pain. And when I went into the emergency room, no viable heartbeat, deceased, that kind of thing. And my body wouldn't pass it. And I was in a lot of pain. So they did a DNC. And 2 weeks ago, I found out what that was. And that also includes ectopic pregnancies. So there's a lot of what does this prevent?
Exactly. I mean, why would you put someone through that mental anguish? Like, you must carry this thing that's now dead until it expels itself painfully and naturally. I don't know.
I had a friend who had a whole mental health crisis on top of the emotional hurt of losing a wanted pregnancy because of and these are her words, and I apologize if this may be triggering for people. In her words, knowing that she was walking around with a dead baby inside of her, and that put her through some stuff emotionally for a long time. So I mean, on top of the physical consequences of a pregnancy, like what that does to your body, y'all know I had a baby in this last year, and I was 39 and a half at the time, and it wears your body out, like physical consequences, holy shit. But what about the mental health consequences as well?
Right. Well, speaking of mental health or just mental disabilities, as a former special ed teacher, I know the effects of, any type of mental illness due to birth defects or whatnot, right? A lot of people used to have the opportunity that if they were so far along, right, and you did the tests and you find out, does your child have Downs? What do you want to do about it, right? That kind of thing. Bonnie, did you have to do that? Did you take that test, or was it offered just out of curiosity?
We did, because of and this is another phrase I hate, advanced maternal age.
Okay, yeah. So,
oh no, they offered that test to me, and I said no. I was 38 when my daughter was born. I said no because
I was 37.
Anxious.
They offered.
I was like, I don't need to know. I don't need to know if she is Downs. I'm gonna love her. It's gonna be amazing. But
okay,
they told me it was a borderline geriatric pregnancy.
So with me, I have some problems. For instance, I have 2 uteri. Well, I'm sorry, uteruses. I just don't like saying uteruses. That's actually the technical term, but it sounds gross. So I say uteri. I have 2 uteri. I have 2 cervix, 1 vagina. So I am anatomically not correct. If I were to have a child willingly, I think they said something like, I got the news and I didn't know till I was 28, get that. But I think the doctor told me that I would be 65% or higher with major disabilities. And we're not talking physical, because physical, I think as a parent, I could deal with. But after teaching special ed, that's actually how I started teaching, I already knew I'm the type of person that cannot deal with mental disabilities on a day-to-day basis. That's just my personality, and I think that's a choice. But if something should happen right now, I would be completely fucked and don't have a choice about how my life is going to go. Now, call that, I mean, some people will absolutely call that selfish. But at the same time, I now know that I cannot live a life like that. Like, I cannot live a life completely giving myself to a child who may never understand the things that I would long for that child to understand. I've worked firsthand with these type of, I mean, we're not even talking Downs, we're just talking like any, disabilities in general that are mental, not just Downs. So if I should get pregnant at this point in time, I would be completely fucked. I don't have a choice. I guess my life is now devoted and completely devoted to a child that I already knew, that was going to end up with, and I say already knew because of course I'm on birth control. I would take all the right steps to prevent that. But just like, was it Shirley was saying that even like if some guy was just like, oh, but I have a vasectomy.
Mm-hmm. You'd be screwed.
I'd be screwed. So I just learned that today. Thank you so much. Because as a single woman now, because I have to take that in consideration now, right? I'm a single woman, not married anymore. Man, this is a huge bummer. And now I have to be extra careful. And just like y'all, I'll be 39 in August. It's like, man, all the stacks of cards are against me instead of the life that I, could have or could give or whatever, so it hurts.
And something that we have to keep in mind is, I don't know about y'all, but my social media feed is full of some people who are very pro-life. I'm glad. Come on out so I can get rid of you. Who are, trying to make the religious excuse. And these are the people who have means, who are middle class or better, and who have never opened their home to foster or adopt. So that's also interesting.
Yes. And that's another thing too I want to add on to is I have 9 sisters, by the way, who all just have my my maiden name. They are not blood, and they are all adopted. And I will tell you, as that having been brought up in a family like that, and I've seen it all. I've seen all sides. I would adopt if need be, absolutely. And I think that that's probably the right thing to do. Now, in adopting, I think you have to do your due diligence in like researching like where these kids are from, ask the questions, because I've seen it all. I have a couple sisters with some mental disabilities that are frightening, but if you're the type of person to handle that, then absolutely do that. But you're at the same time correct. There's not enough people doing that. So it all deals with religion and not about keeping a commitment, because once the baby is born, no one wants to adopt it, or no one cares about what happens to it, or the education or the well-being of that child. It's just over after birth. So it's a shit show, isn't it?
Well, yeah, that's another one of my concerns is that like it's privilege. It's privilege to be able to determine how reproductively you want your future to be. That's privilege. And a lot of women are not afforded that privilege, and we do not have the infrastructure, nor do we have the actual wherewithal to take care of these babies that are going to be born to poverty, and they're going to need support. And they don't care about that.
There's going to be so many
frustrating.
people bitching about the welfare and why can't these people get jobs and why can't they take care of their kids? Why do we have to support them? Because they don't have a choice.
Yep.
That's why.
Exactly. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I'm like, come on, shut up.
Well, and
and
one of
it's like,
my
Well, I
I'm
was
sorry.
trying to, and then I lost my job because I got pregnant.
One of
Right?
the people who had a lot to say on my Facebook page, who's very pro-life, she had the privilege of affording IVF to have her children. So I don't really want to hear it because we all know the community this is going to affect the most.
Yep.
And it ain't people who can afford IVF.
Absolutely.
Yep.
well, and I was going to bring up some of kind of the background with a lot of this, the pro-life movement. And it's not, we all know it's not about the babies. And it is this like white evangelical group that has taken over and pushed this agenda through the Republican Party. And it wasn't as big of a deal until, or as much a party issue until the 80s. It's always been, there's always been laws, there's always been things back and forth. But when this particular iteration and came through was in the 80s. There was a man named Ben Wattenberg. He wrote a book called The Birth Dearth, What Happens When People in Free Countries Don't Have Enough Babies. And when he says free, he really means white.
Right.
And a lot of people picked up on this book, especially like Reagan Republicans, because it goes along with crack babies, welfare queens, all of that racism, classism that was happening in the 80s. And the book, in it, part of it, he said, there needs to be more white babies. And how do we do this? Because with, abortion rates, most of the abortions are happening with white women, and we need more white babies. We're gonna be outnumbered. And how do you do this? Well, you could open the borders, but if you open the borders, we have to open it for everybody, and we may have people who are not white coming in. We could pay women to have babies and support them with that, but if you do that, we have to pay for everybody. So what you can do is, since most women who are getting abortions are white women, stop that and stop the white birth dearth. And I saw it referred to as soft eugenics, and it is. And it's become, and it played into religion and pro-life, being for supposedly the sanctity of life. Churches picked it up. This kind of evangelical ideology just proliferated, and is pushed with white supremacy and this big fear of the changing world. And then we get McCain bringing, Palin in and Tea Party. I mean, it's more complicated than that, but basically that's kind of where we fucking are. You cannot remove some of the racism and classism with the abortion question. And I see a lot of people that are we're all women, we all should stick together, and you can't remove those issues in there, and you have to address them as when you're addressing the issue. You can't remove racism. You can't remove the fact that, this is going to disproportionately affect BIPOC women or poor women for class issues. And it's too intersectional. We can't remove that. And we can't separate one social identity from another. We're all women, yes, but some of us are Black women, some of us are Hispanic. It's, you can't, or some of them are LGBT. And we can't remove that. I saw something referred to as it's mitigation versus adaptation. And when you have change, it's usually referred to with climate change, either you adapt to it or you try to mitigate the issues. And it's when you adapt to the problem that's happening and you don't stop what was causing it, it's going to happen again. And it's like, we had a Black president, but we didn't remove any of those issues that kept there from being a Black president until the 2000s. And there is a lot of, you have to, and we all have to recognize some of these inherent issues with the problem and try to solve them in order for us to get back the agency with this.
I appreciate you bringing that up, Lola or Zola, because it's the thing that makes me want to scream at people is that these politicians And like you said, the wealthy, mostly white women are still going to be able to get abortions. They'll be able to travel. They'll be able to, call in a favor from daddy's friend or whatever. In a country where I believe the statistic I heard was the U.S. has the highest maternal mortality rate in the industrialized world, which is appalling to begin with. But it's also, like, from women in general, it's 33% higher than that even for Black women. The maternal mortality rate is appalling. So this is an issue that is literally life and death. Okay, so this is kind of rewinding back to something, but it's something that I keep like banging my head against the wall about. Why would we want people who don't want to be parents to be parents?
Mm-hmm.
We've all seen that in our classrooms. I've literally had kids tell me, like, well, my mom never wanted me to begin with, so, like, why having my daughter, if anything, has made me more pro-choice, because I don't want a kid to be in a situation where they are less loved and less cared for than my baby is. Why would we want people who don't want to have kids to have kids? This shit's hard. Like, yeah. If you don't want it badly, it's going to increase, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, like, I fear that it's going to increase domestic violence against kids, abuse, like parents resenting the kid that they never wanted to begin with. I don't know. It just, yeah, I'm preaching to the choir here.
It doesn't make any sense, and I don't think it's supposed to. I keep seeing, and because a lot of the things we've been dealing with, I keep seeing the cruelty is the point. And like I said, you mentioned they've been playing the long game, and I don't think it's supposed to make sense to us. I don't think there's a way that we can hear their reasoning and go, oh, okay, and turn to that side.
I do want to say, this is so cliche, not all Republicans, but it does bring up the fact that there are a lot of people on both sides who are pretty appalled by this. My parents are Republicans. They have been my whole life. And I was lucky that I was raised by Mama Temper, who has always been incredibly socially liberal and raised me to be a feminist. She takes no shit and she takes no prisoners. And so when this happened, the first thing she did is she called me and she said something like, "Oh, baby, I'm so sorry." She said, "I was lucky to have these protections when I was, in my years of being able to have children. I was lucky to have the protections of Roe v. Wade, and now you don't, and neither does your daughter." And she was very, very upset. She's also voting for Beto O'Rourke. I just want to throw that out there. I know.
Yes, Mama, yes.
I said, holy shit, really? And she was like, fuck Brad Abbott. I was like, oh my God.
Yes.
I know. But that's a sidebar.
I have a little crush on your mom, honestly.
Yeah. It's something that she mentioned specifically because my family is Southern Baptist on both sides. Hardcore Southern Baptists, as conservative as you can be. But growing up, my mom said that only ignorant people use the Bible to excuse, or to control women's bodies.
That's wise words.
Yes. Yep. Mama Temper is the shit. And so even though we are Southern Baptist, she said, fuck that shit. Now, the rest of my family, I don't need to know what they think. I know what they think, and I don't give a shit, but also that.
There's a lot of posts about auntie networks or auntie networks and camping. You want to take people camping and saying, if you want to come camping is great in my state, come visit, I'll take you camping. And it is a great way to kind of show your support. But don't volunteer to go camping. There are organizations that have been doing this for decades. And I know a lot of people that say that probably will never have to, but if you are approached by someone who needs assistance, please go to an organization. National Network of Abortion Funds is great. And I'll ask Elvis, I think he's going to post some links and we'll see if we can put some stuff up. But literal decades of people have been doing this and have organizations, and they have the resources and the knowledge. They vet people. They know exactly what to do, and are sometimes, I believe, they may have grants or funds in order for them to be able to, transportation, lodging, medical care after. And if you really truly want to take somebody camping, join the organization. You can volunteer, you can be trained, and you could be a part of that. But I saw someone on TikTok and they said, sometimes in the rebellion, understand that it may be your job to make copies. And I think, and it may just be talk, but I think there's a lot of people that are kind of centering and want to help, but you may need to make copies, and that's awesome. And if you're assisting somebody with these organizations, make sure you're using something secure like Signal. You're using DuckDuckGo to look up information. Make sure the organization is reputable. Make sure it's not a pregnancy crisis center. And be willing to do things that aren't related to camping, because there's a lot of people who it's like when there's a disaster and you want to donate clothes or something tangible. They really just need money because they already know what to do with that money. And so we'll just follow their lead. And this is not trying to shame anybody who's been talking about that, but just if you truly want to help, then please work with these organizations. And if someone approaches you and needs assistance, make sure you securely, using like DuckDuckGo or whatever, and a VPN, to find the information that you need if it is not a safe situation in your state. Because the last thing you want to do is try to help somebody and get into trouble and have in Texas, I don't know if people have forgotten, but someone can file a lawsuit against you.
Yeah.
And it's not the government, it is a person, anybody.
Yeah.
Some redneck you forgot you added to Facebook so you can play Farmville with them in 2010. If they realize that you have assisted somebody, you can be sued in Texas. And what are you going to do when you personally have to handle those legal costs and those issues? So you really got to be knowledgeable and realize the end goal is to help that person. So there's just a mention of that.
Thank you. That's absolutely a good reminder. I was going to say the same thing about in Texas, you can be charged with a felony for assisting in any way, even if you are the Uber driver who takes someone to their appointment. It's some bullshit, but yeah, be safe out there. Work with organizations that have the legal knowledge and infrastructure to be able to know how to operate safely.
Have we said fuck Ken Paxton yet?
Fuck Ken Paxton.
I thought that was just understood. That's
Forever.
just always.
Yeah, that bullshit about how they did the Texas trigger law and then he made it like a sanctity of life holiday.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that guy. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You mean the one who's under indictment right now and is still somehow the Attorney General of Texas?
He wanted a pardon from his Trumpy Wumpy, but he didn't get it.
Oh, sad violins.
A lot of this has to do about the pregnancy apps who are farming and selling their data. I actually found, I'm plugging this amazing app called Stardust. It is a female created period app, and they publicly made a statement. And when you download the app, the first thing that they say is that they support Roe v. Wade and they support a woman's right to choose. And their data is inaccessible to the government. And yes, it's called Stardust. So I deleted my old app and downloaded her. And it's also really funny. I enjoy the app.
And in general, just for data privacy, even an app that purports that, like this one, I don't know a whole lot about it, but especially ones that are new, just keep that data to a minimum. And if someone were to subpoena your records and they turn it over, that's not, your period app's not going to be a smoking gun. But it's going to use, they're going to use multiple things in order to build a case. It'll be your period app. It'll be your search history. It'll be your mobile search history. It'll be your emails. It'll be your text messages. It'll be your phone calls. All that information. And that's always been something people can look that up. I mean, or look that up, subpoena. And we in general have, turned over a lot of privacy because of smartphones and even Facebook. I mean, they've been selling data all the time. And so just keep in mind in general what you're doing, if it's a big concern. But use Signal for text messaging, that is what I've heard, and DuckDuckGo for your searches. They don't store cookies, they don't track that. Those are good apps just for privacy in general, even if it's not related to this.
Oh my God, how scary is it that we live in a world that this is what we have to think about?
Fucking terrifying is what it is.
Gilead.
Yeah.
It is Gilead. Handmaids Tale, y'all.
Some dystopian, but Zola, would you like to speak to that?
I
Your
would.
thoughts?
I know. I need to get the feminist killjoy T-shirt because that's me. Handmaid's Tale, the imagery and posting that, it's not great. Dystopias are usually kind of like, hey, what if this horrific atrocity happened to white people? Is kind of how a lot of these are. And reproductive violence has been on Indigenous people, BIPOC, poor women, like hundreds of years. I look it up specifically because do y'all have a lot of information or knowledge? Because I knew some, but knowledge on compulsory sterilization.
I did. I read a couple of articles about it when all the backlash kind of started.
Oh, there are some huge cases in my state regarding eugenics in the government.
Yeah, it's bad.
It was terrible.
I mean, it was all over the state, and this was happening in the 60s and 70s. This isn't like a long time ago. This is, people were, like Black women, they would get a Mississippi appendectomy and have a unnecessary hysterectomy performed on them when they went to give birth or have another procedure. For Latinx women in California, like huge forced sterilization without informed consent or through coercion. And what is it? I looked it up. 40% of Native American women in the United States underwent sterilization in the 1970s. So a lot of the stuff that is shown in Handmaid's Tale has very recently, and a lot of this reproductive violence has happened. It's entirely possible someone knows somebody who was sterilized like that, and it's still going on for disabled women. And if that, it's centering a TV show and it feels like it's cosplaying trauma, and that's not anybody's intention. But I think at this point, I know there was a lot of it when the TV show first came out, but I think it's not sending the message that you would like to send. And I'm not saying don't do that. And if that book is meaningful to you, and then you want to post something or talk about something, then that's fine. I'm not calling you out for that, but it is problematic to show that as a kind of support for abortion. Excuse me. Like I said, I'm a big old feminist killjoy. I'm sorry.
I was, again, the person that was making the, blessed be the fruit comments the day after stuff, but I do, that's something, and I think a lot of the people listening would kind of, our listeners, and like we tend to be a very, when we know better, we do better crowd. So I think that's important stuff for us to know. So thank you for doing that emotional labor for us there, Zola.
You're welcome. And there's articles all over the place for this. I haven't seen the TV show, so I don't have a dog in the fight for that. I just don't like those kind of things in general. I feel like even before any of this, it's like things are garbage in general. I want to watch Ted Lasso. I need an episode of Bluey, and
the
something.
escapism. Like, I'm not, like,
Yeah,
the world is a dumpster fire. I am not watching or reading things to make me more depressed. Like, if I know ahead of time that something is going to make me cry, I'm not going to watch it because
I don't need that in my fiction.
Right.
I am a professional depressed, anxious person, so it did not affect me whatsoever. But I did binge all 4 seasons in 2 weeks. I really did.
Well, I
Seen any of it?
read.
When did you read it? Because I read it like in January of 2017, like right after inauguration, and I flipped shit. Like
when I read the book, I did have an emotional breakdown. The book, but the TV show, not so much. I was pretty fine.
Okay.
Well, I read the book when I had jury duty when I was in college, which was 1990 something, because I'm old, and it was back in the day when you couldn't call in the day before and see if your number was coming up. Like, you actually had to go and sit all day at the courthouse. So I did, and I brought the Handmaid's Tale to read because I was in college and that's what we read. And I read the whole thing, and it freaked me out when I left amongst all these governmental buildings, and it was just very, very odd. That was my experience. I could not get through the second season of the show. But the book I love, but I also love Margaret Atwood. So,
Zola, do you think it, and this is an honest question, I don't know, is there any value to it in the sense of like, okay, this woke you up, but now here's what you need to know about it? Like, could it be useful in that way?
I think, and this isn't saying don't watch anything. This is more of using that imagery on social media to comment on the life situation, because I think that's part of the problem is that this stuff, this stuff has been happening, and it has been happening to Indigenous and BIPOC women and men. That's why they're joking about mandatory vasectomies. That happened. There were men, in prison, or especially Indigenous, but they were forcibly sterilized. They had vasectomies, and I think that's the issue. That's actually the issue, is that it's a problem, and you might want to look at the media and the information you're consuming. If it took a Handmaid's Tale to wake you up to some of the issues that have happened just in general. And if that's your touchstone, I think that's, and there are better people than I have spoken to this. So I don't know if I'm articulating it as well as I should, but, I think that's the issue, is when it takes some sort of fiction to bring it to your mind and make you aware of something that's been happening for people. What was it? 1979 was when they had new guidelines about informed consent for surgeries. And, I just think, I think it's useful to, if that was your first experience of this kind of reproductive violence, and for women, I think, there's some more reading and some more information you could look to. And maybe that's a cue for you to do further reading. Because information that's how, it's not going to work against them. They don't care about the information, but for yourself, finding out more information, finding out exactly what, the case said, the opinion was, so that you know what the issue is, finding out what your own state laws are, just a general ideas, just so you know. You have to be able to know what could happen to you. And I think more information you can absorb and that you can safely for your mental health. Because I know that I have to limit my sources on things sometimes, because my anxiety won't let me absorb and, massive amounts of doom scrolling. But I think the more information you have, especially if this decision has made you stop and realize some stuff in general, then I think, maybe find more information so you can protect yourself.
What hope do we have going forward? Like, what, obviously, like, donate to established causes, donate time, donate money, donate your platform if you have a platform, if you are somebody who, has 8 gajillion followers on TikTok or whatever. Like, what are some other sources of hope? Is there any source of hope stuff that we can kind of lean on here?
Get out and vote.
Oh, get out and vote for sure. Also look into companies who are willing to pay for any type of expenses that will include abortion. There are several lists going around. So even if you live in a state where these trigger laws have taken into effect, there are corporations that will kind of help bypass that. So definitely look into that.
Yeah, and that's in their best interest because they don't have to pay for maternity leave. So, I mean, I don't want to be too pessimistic, but it's great that they're doing that, and it's important that it is in their interest.
That's completely valid.
That is a whole thing, because like that goes into a whole other can of worms, and we're gonna run out of time. But like, what the hell are we doing, forcing more people to have babies when we don't have universal health care in this country? We don't have paid maternity leave. Child care is a hot damn. I'm sorry. As somebody who just
expanded Medicare,
maternity leave, who just took maternity leave recently, and like, as a teacher, I had been banking days since I started teaching. And not everybody has that option. So even blowing 2/3 of my accumulated days in one fell swoop was a privilege. What the hell, America? Sorry.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like, we don't have the infrastructure.
Right.
Because we certainly don't give a damn about poor people.
No.
I don't mean me personally. I mean, like, as a nation.
No, that clearly.
No. This is just a reminder. I feel like pregnancy is a protected characteristic. So if your job is giving you shit about you being pregnant, look into your options. Physical complications can be covered under ADA, but look into your options. If your job is giving you shit about I said this in the ADHD episode, about anything medically that is happening to you, medically and mental health, look into your options. I know it's hard, but don't take a shit if you, as much as you can, because even knowing that it's like companies will try to screw you. Your district, I don't know if it's your district or if it would be specifically your school or whomever, that they may try to. And advocate for yourself the best that you can, especially now in general with it. We need to definitely advocate for ourselves overall.
Yes.
Do no harm, but take no shit.
Word.
Absolutely.
I think, Zola, I'm sorry, I keep going back to you because you flexed your research muscles real hard on this topic, and I loved it.
Yeah.
What were some of the possible workarounds that you sent? Something about using federal buildings, federal lands, as a possible.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
I was shocked. And I actually, when the decision came down, I was getting, within minutes of me getting that Washington Post notification, I was getting fundraising emails. And I was like, stop asking me for money, you toothless fucks. Do something. But one of the emails was a rep. I don't know. And I don't think that this is necessarily specifically his idea. This is where I first heard it. But Elizabeth Moore and AOC also have said things about this. But his name was James Talarico. I guess he's a rep in Austin. But some of the things that he said was, and he was going to propose, is leasing federal property to clinics on federal land or in federal offices. State law doesn't apply. And, that want to say that for, don't go do something on federal land because you think, Texas isn't going to get mad at you. But, it's federal property. And so the state law would not, to my knowledge, would not apply on there. So having those be on, I don't know how that would look, but that's an option. And also,
it's kind of like the embassy thing. Like if you're like on a foreign embassy, just on the state level instead, like national. That's wild. I didn't even think about that, but that's kind of awesome.
Yeah. And it's one of those things you're like, oh, okay, maybe, and again, it's a like adaptation mitigation. I mean, that's adapting to the situation. We don't, but that long as we view that as temporary. The next one would be hiring providers as federal employees to provide immunity from the states. So all of those people who could face jail time, fines, suing, if they're a federal employee, they are doing federal work, and the states should not be able to touch them.
I'm making all kinds of impressed noises with your research that occurred to me. You can't hear me because I muted myself, but impressed noises.
I felt it. I was like, oh, Shirley loves me. She appreciates it. But AOC did point out, something that needs to happen, obviously, is restrain judicial review and expand the court. Like, this should not have happened. There's been a lot of noise, and I don't know, I don't want to speak to it specifically, but I've seen, they were saying they lied when they were getting confirmed. I don't believe that they necessarily did, but when Comey Barrett and Kavanaugh and, all said, they were all specifically asked about Roe, and they all gave answers that were still true. It's a very important precedent. That's not a lie. They didn't say shit about what they would do with it. And obviously, the court is stacked, and they're not behaving in a way that it's intended for the Supreme Court of the United States to behave. So there are paths forward, and there are things that people are doing. And it's kind of a look for the helper situation. For people who are saying, if people in general saying vote, absolutely. But if your elected official is telling you, it's important to vote, also give me $3 to Act Blue or my campaign or blah, blah, blah. Fuck off. Give us some options. Tell us what you're going to do, because we've been asking you to do something for a very long time. We put you in there to do something.
Yep.
And you are limited, but obviously people need to think wider, and people are. It's just really disappointing because we keep voting.
No balls.
What? Clarence Thomas.
Oh.
Fuck that guy.
He's always been awful. He's always been awful. Are you guys old enough to remember the Anita Hill stuff?
Anita Hill, I remember it.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember it, and this, obviously the just the little details. I didn't realize what it was and what it meant. I keep saying Anita was right. It's like, we knew that. We knew that.
Yeah. They just don't care about women. That's it.
Yeah.
I don't know, y'all. I have always been such a Supreme Court geek, and I love. I had such admiration and respect for the Supreme Court, and now I just I don't know.
Well, maybe we can do something to get that back.
That would be nice, but it was not ever supposed to be partisan, and this is that was Nina Totenberg's point. It's like the legitimacy, like the gravity. It's kind of gone. It's just kind of a farce. I don't know. Not to get dark.
Yeah, no, it's it's been dark. Yeah, it's real bad. And I was talking to a friend of mine who is in law school, because I had her check me on some of the opinions, because I was like, I know this is right, but I need you to tell me if I'm understanding this properly. And I said it's pissing me off, because it's interesting and maybe not all things, but it's interesting how they did this and how the opinion and how they're shaping it, as far as the clause and like the case law behind it is interesting for anybody who is interested in that kind of stuff. But in reality, it's fucking awful.
Mm-hmm.
But it would be interesting to read about if this was in a history book. But we are living in the interesting times, and that's not so great.
Yeah, that's one of those, like, I've seen that meme on Facebook a couple of times, and like, I'm getting real tired of living through the most interesting chapter in my daughter's future history book.
Shit.
Yeah.
Between the pandemic and
The insurrection.
the insurrection and this shit, like, I remember when I was in middle school, we had to do a report, like in my history social studies class, about it was something to do with the 1960s, and we were supposed to interview somebody who had, lived through the 1960s about like their memories and experiences and the civil rights movement and landing on the moon and, this and that and the other. And I was talking to my mom about it, and she was like, it's really weird to think that something that was just my life is something that you're learning about in history now. And yeah, I'm real over being a history book chapter. This is not fun.
There is a lot of, and again, it's related to social media. There's a lot of people sharing their stories. And again, with emotional labor, doing the emotional labor to hopefully make it realistic to people who may not have any experience, maybe hopefully change some minds and hearts. But just remember, that's your personal medical history. Abortion is healthcare, and you don't owe anybody that story. And nobody owes you theirs. But you don't owe anybody that story. So if you do not want to share any experience that you have had, ladies here have been nice enough to share their own information, but that's a gift you give somebody. And you don't have to justify your opinion with personal experience. And especially you shouldn't anyway. It's that bullshit with men of, what would happen? Would you like that if your daughter happened? It doesn't.
Fuck you.
No, it shouldn't be anybody. I don't have to tell you to be a decent human being. Like, it doesn't have to be related directly to you and affect you. And so, your one wild and beautiful life is better spent, not arguing with idiots on the internet if you don't want to. If you want to, if that's your hobby, go after it. And I know it's some people's hobby because I have to ban them on the Facebook pages. But, which is...
For those of y'all that didn't know, Zola is our social media guru. When you see the posts, the awesome, hilarious, thought-provoking things on the Teacher Needs a Drink Facebook pages, that is our Zola. That is, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, heavily influenced with Elvis. But it's funny seeing people do that and comment on some of the, memes or stuff that we've posted, because you obviously haven't listened to this show. I mean, so you obviously you're not realizing where we are. I don't know how you found us, but, making a comment that is not in agreement or arguing with people on there is futile, because what we'll do is we will ban you if you were bad enough and not think about it. Let's think, ban you and then go on with our lives happy and not give you another thought. So, but yeah, you don't owe anybody your story, and you don't have to give them your story if you don't want to. And I feel like because there's a lot of people sharing, there may be pressure, or there may be a need to try to defend your point because of that. And you don't have to. You don't have to. So don't think that. This is me telling you don't. Yeah, exactly. This is all of us telling you, just don't. Just don't. You don't have to. And I mean, Clarence, honestly, Clarence getting a lot of shit, and I've seen some racist shit being given to him. But my problem, Ames.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. That's who I'm mad at. We knew Clarence was a jackass.
Well, we knew her with her as well. Like, anybody who didn't think she was going to do this at the first opportunity was kidding themselves. to put it nicely.
I wasn't surprised.
Yeah, right. And Kavanaugh as well. Like
Oh, come
when
on.
Oh yeah.
they did the hearings for him, I was like, oh my God, this guy.
Yeah. Well, and I
I
knew
did
it,
enjoy
but
watching him
I
cry.
I love that the SNL skit about it is hilarious.
I haven't seen it. Did they do a good one?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, really, really good. Look it up.
Look it up.
Look it up. Do it.
This is a really
Yeah.
good time that I took up embroidery because I really like taking my needle and stabbing it in something over and over. It's very cathartic.
I know.
I know this is something that we've talked about regularly, but anybody got any good like self-care, mental health self-care tips during this time of turbulence?
Put the phone down. Go outside.
Shirley recommends stabbing stuff and also
Yes.
put the phone down and go outside.
I was about to say, go for a hike.
Man,
Yeah,
go
and
walk in a
I-
mall. It's too hot outside, but go take a walk in a mall.
I'm gonna say if you live
in a much more temperature friendly place. Just saying.
if you live in a place that
Not
feels
Satan's
like a
asshole.
sauna right now, then yeah.
I say if you feel the need and you have not looked into it, go to therapy. Like just if there's any stigma or shame, or I mean, if it's a medical, or actually not medical, but a financial issue, you can find some options, at least something. Go if you need to go to therapy, and if you need to take medication, if you need both. I mean, what is it I see on tweet about, how do people out here just raw dogging life? Like, how are you not medicated? Just
Can't relate.
Oh, there's some comedian that calls them arm floaties. Like, you need your arm floaties.
That's awesome.
I speak for myself and at least a couple of other people here. We are medicated and life is better that way. Do what works for you. If you're somebody that doesn't believe in med, go to therapy, do your mindfulness practice, do something, but we are pro therapy and also pro meds around here.
And pro embroidery because you get to stab something over and over.
And if your therapist isn't working for you right now, you can find another one. It's not like your hairdresser. You can break up. Yeah, if they don't work, they just may, and it's not that they may not be bad. They just may not work for you. And that's
Well, I mean, I think it's important to know that, like, the best thing you can do is stay politically active and vote.
Yes.
We posted something during the George Floyd, a lot of George Floyd protests about, sometimes being in your lane doesn't necessarily mean a physical protest. You may not be able to because of circumstances, work, physical limitations. So find your lane that will help you be able to voice your abilities and show support, and you can, whatever you can. And if it's not a physical protest, then you may not be able to. If you've got dudes, to make them, if you're going physical protest, they should show up. We didn't talk any about what men should be doing, but the men in your life, they may not feel they can say anything, but they should be supporting you and elevating your voice.
Yes.
It should be, and there's a lot of people who say, oh, well, if you don't have a uterus, you can't say anything. And I mean, and this is a bodily autonomy, issue. And it's everybody deserves bodily autonomy. And this should be a situation and a thing that they should be aware of and be concerned with and elevate women's voices or in order to help and not stand back. So
I must say, I love my husband because he is appropriately pissed off, and he also just listens.
This is from an article called "Necessity of Hope." It's a Rebecca Tracer article, but she wrote that the prison abolitionist Marie Macabas reminds us that hope is a discipline. It's also a political strategy and a survival mechanism. As Kava said, it's less about how you feel and more about the practice of making a decision every day that you're still going to put out one foot in front of the other, that you're still going to get up in the morning and you're still going to struggle. It's work to be hopeful.
Amen.
Your job as part of the resistance right now is to hang on to hope. So. All right. Well, thank you guys for. Thank you to our listeners. If you stuck with us this long and you did not turn off the podcast in a fit of conservative rage, we appreciate you and we love you. Thank you to the other hosts for being here tonight. Lucille, thank you for being here.
Thank you. I love you ladies, and I try to be with you all as much as possible with my busy schedule.
We love you.
We love you too. Mama Chicken, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Shirley, thank you for being here.
Life's a bitch. Now so am I.
That seems really appropriate right now.
Do you know what it's from?
It sounds familiar. I know it. Just tell me.
Catwoman from Batman Returns.
That's right.
Only
That's
Catwoman.
Yes. But apropos completely, like, for this topic. And
yes. I took a lot of time in selecting my quotes for the night.
To our wonderful, wonderful Zola.
Dramaturge.
Yes.
Flexing those academic nerd muscles.
Zola, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me and letting me talk at length and yell. This was fairly cathartic, I think, a little bit. I don't know. How do y'all feel about that?
It was good to be able to talk about it with like-minded folks. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. It is a helpful, hopeful thing to know that there are other people out there who feel the same way. So, to our listeners, we love you. Thank you for listening and sticking with this. Hang on to hope. Keep up the fight. And if you are looking for resources, I believe those are going to be posted on the, so if you are somebody who is looking for resources, or if you know someone who is, we will, and if you can't find it, message Elvis and he will point you in the right direction. But we love you guys. Thank you for listening. Deep breaths, deep drinks. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers. Cheers, motherfuckers. Folks, cheers to everyone except the Supreme Court. Fuck the Supreme Court.
Oh, God.
Except for Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Stephen
White guy. The old white guy, yeah. Whose name is important, I can't remember it.
Stephen Breyer, like the ice cream, Breyers.
Yes.
All right, thanks for joining us for another episode of Teacher Needs a Drink podcast. I'd like to thank my host tonight, the very wonderful Bunny O'Hare, for taking the reins and the lead. I stand by and support every single thing her and the other hosts said tonight. I'd like to thank them as well. Big thank you to Zola Zanzibar for all of her meticulous research that she did in helping this podcast out. I also have to thank Miss Lucille Lane and Miss Mama Chicken, and of course Miss Shirley Temple for helping it out. These women are wonderful, and I appreciate all the time, effort, and emotional heartache they went through to do this. I'd also thank all of our Patreons at Patreon. If you like this podcast, like to hear more of it, join our Patreon. For as little as $5, $10 a month, you get all kinds of extra bonus features, extra content, and access to our wonderful Facebook group. Last but not least, I want to thank our sponsor, Ludlam Dramatics. If you are a theater teacher or no one in your building, go to Ludlam Dramatics right now and sign up. All right, folks, I hope you enjoy your holiday, I hope you enjoy your summer, and I hope you vote. Please, vote. All right, friends, cheers.